Good morning. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. You are welcome. We apologize for late start. We normally start on time, but I suppose today there's been quite a number of things, loose ends to tight, but we are ready now. So apologies. Let me welcome the members of the media and our esteemed friends, stakeholders, faith-based organization leaders, civil society organizations, non-governmental organizations, friends, colleagues. You are welcome to today's media briefing of the governance cluster. The theme and the focus for this media briefing focusing on promoting values of accountability, transparency, and fairness, dealing with the issues of audit as it relates to governance. So there are 3 committees that will be engaging with you in this media briefing: the Portfolio Committee on Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs, the Portfolio Committee on Public Service and Administration, and then the Standing Committee on Auditor General. So on the panel, as it currently stands, we've got the Honorable Chairperson of the Portfolio Committee on Public Service and Administration, Honorable Jan de Villiers, and then we've got the Chairperson of the Standing Committee on Auditor General, Honorable Walter Wessels. Shortly, we will be joined by the Honorable Chairperson of the Portfolio Committee on Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs, Honorable Dr. Zweli Mkhize. So he will catch up with us as we are proceeding. As usual, we will have the presentations from the 3 chairpersons, and thereafter we'll open the floor to engage with your good selves. I'm going to call the chairperson of the Portfolio Committee on Public Service and Administration, Honorable de Villiers, to come to present a statement dealing with youth employment by the public service and ghost employees in the public service, amongst others. Thank you very much. You can come with this. Yes. Thank you. For technical reasons.
Thank you very much, Program Director Mutapu. Good morning, honorable members, members of the media and stakeholders present. Thank you for being here. The Minister of Finance, in his budget speech last month, announced planned expenditure reviews, which will examine more than 300 billion rand in government spending since 2013 to identify duplications, inefficiencies, and waste in the public sector wage bill. Part of this, he said, is a data-driven approach to detecting payroll irregularities that will replace the more costly method of using census. This initiative will cross-reference administrative data sets to identify ghost workers and other anomalies across government departments. Following this, the Portfolio Committee of Public Service and Administration met on 28 May to interrogate this persistent and deeply corrosive problem of ghost workers in the public sector. This, I must stress, is not merely a payroll anomaly. It is a deliberate and orchestrated form of systemic corruption. It is organized crime within the state. And as a Portfolio Committee, tasked with oversight in the public service, the time for half measures and talk shops is over. So let us be clear, the phenomenon of ghost workers is not an issue of administrative error. There are real people creating these ghost workers, reaping the benefit of siphoning taxpayer money into their own coffers. The Department of Public Service and Administration confirmed before Parliament that ghost workers present across all three spheres of government. They are present in national and provincial governments, but also in municipalities, government agencies, and state-owned entities alike. For example, last year the Auditor General uncovered 6.4 million rand in salaries being paid to ghost workers at the Mpumalanga Department of Education alone. In May this year, the Gauteng Health Department froze the salaries of 230 employees who could not be verified. These are not invisible names on paper. Real people are drawing fraudulent salaries, and real taxpayer money is being siphoned into the pockets of corrupt criminals. The DPSA has disclosed that inserting a ghost worker into the payroll system requires collusion, because at least 3 officials need to work together to create a ghost worker. This means we are dealing not with random lapses in judgment, but with embedded criminal syndicates operating in our public institutions. The numbers seem like they are staggering, and they are not anomalies. They are symptoms of a system that needs structural intervention with concrete impact. This is why the committee welcomes the joint audit of ghost employees now underway between the Department of Public Service and Administration and the National Treasury. This integrated, data-driven approach, the Minister announced, represents a significant departure from the fragmented ad hoc audits of the past and marks an important opportunity to align efforts across government to identify and eliminate ghost workers at scale. However, a data audit alone is not enough. We are calling on this process to begin with physical, in-person, human verification audits for all government employees, underpinned by biometric identification. Every person drawing a public salary must appear in person and be verified. The public has the right to know the names on the payroll correspond to individuals who really exist and who serve the public. Currently, the 3-tier authentication system used to validate employee status is very much open to manipulation. Internal controls have failed. Oversight has been diluted. The opportunity for fraud persists because the tools meant to prevent it have not been enforced, and worse, have been exploited by those meant to protect them. To change course, our committee has resolved to intervene as follows. We will reconvene with the Department of Public Service and Administration and National Treasury in the 3rd quarter of 2025 to receive a full progress report on the implementation of the joint ghost worker audit strategy. This should include details on the scope of these audits, preliminary findings, and proposed enforcement measures. These departments must take the lead in developing a formalized framework to ensure detection, prevention, and regular audits for ghost workers across the public service. Such a framework will thus mandate formal periodic payroll audits and reconciliation, in-person verification, and biometric registration, centralized authorization of appointments and terminations, and digital certification of employee attendance and performance. This will assist not only Parliament, but also the Public Service Commission in conducting effective oversight and in institutionalizing clean human resource management practices across government. The committee will also call on the Auditor General of South Africa to expand its scope, requiring that all department and entity audits include a verification of whether internal ghost employees audits have been conducted and whether they were done credibly. We will push for disciplinary and criminal action to follow every detection of ghost workers. Names must be handed over to the SIU, the Hawks, and the SAPS. Fraudsters must not be shielded by departmental silence or internal collusion. The committee is concerned about the lack of uniformity in the public in human resource practices, particularly the continued reliance on manual data capturing that has compromised the integrity of personnel systems. As such, we will prioritize the professionalization and digital transformation of human resource management systems across all spheres of government, because the ghost worker phenomenon is made possible not just by fraud, but also by outdated and fragmented administrative processes and systems. We believe that incomplete performance reviews, poor attendance tracking, and manual leave registers are early warning signs and must trigger automatic investigations. Ladies and gentlemen, let us be clear. Consequences of inaction are grave. Every ghost worker represents a post that could have been filled by a qualified graduate, a dedicated nurse, a teacher at a rural school, or a social worker supporting the vulnerable. Every fraudulent salary paid is a step backwards in the fight for a professional, ethical, and responsive state. In light of this, the Portfolio Committee cannot and will not stand idle. Among our priorities in the 7th Parliament is to push for the cleanup of the PERSOL system, which remains the foundation of the human resources and payroll records in the public sector. And as a committee, we are determined to ensure that this time our institutions follow through on their commitments, not with policy promises, but with action, not with statistics, but with results, ensuring accountability from the two lead ministries until we have rid the public service of this parasitic theft, which is ghost workers. On the topic of youth employment, in the spirit of Youth Month, the Portfolio Committee last week met with the Department of Public Service and Administration and the Public Service Commission to assess the progress of youth employment in the public sector. The discussion was vital, as we must build a future-ready public service. Facilitating youth employment is not merely a matter of human resource adjustments, but it's also a strategic investment in the renewal and the sustainability of the public service. Currently, youth aged 31 to 35 comprise 27% of the public service workforce, over 347,000 individuals, with women representing the majority. Most are employed as administrative, finance, supply chain, and in technical roles. This does signal some progress, although there are several systematic challenges that remain. Budget constraints continue to limit the absorption of interns into permanent roles, and many young people are deployed in roles unrelated to their training, with limited mentorship, supervision, and formal evaluation. Their contributions often go unrecognized, with no certification or skills acquired through their process of employment in the state, and concerns around nepotism, opaque recruitment practices further erode trust in the system. The committee welcomes initiatives such as youth hiring targets in departmental annual performance plans and proposed voluntary early retirement schemes to create openings for young professionals. We emphasize to the department that these measures must be part of a broader strategy, as placements without professional development or recognition are insufficient. We also called for structured mentorship, formalized exit pathways, and a recruitment process that is transparent, fair, and based on merit. It is not just about placing more youth in our public service, it is also about creating channels of development for them. Addressing youth employment is no longer optional. It is a national imperative to prepare the state for the future. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable de Villiers. Let me also welcome the Honorable Chairperson of the Portfolio Committee on Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs, Dr. Zweli Mkhize. As we indicated, he will join us during the proceedings. He just did so. Let me also extend the welcome that I did at the introduction phase of more stakeholders, the sectoral professional organizations. You are welcome. Representatives of traditional leadership. You are welcome. The youth representatives, very important during this month of the youth. And students, you are welcome. And members of the public, welcome. I now wish to invite the Chairperson of the Portfolio Committee on, the Standing Committee on Auditor General. Yes, the Chairperson of the Standing Committee on Auditor General, Mr. Vessels, Honorable Vessels, welcome.
Thank you very much, and good morning to the stakeholders and members of the media and fellow chairpersons. Let me start by saying that one can't deny the fact that our local government is in trouble, that there's a lack of service delivery in general, and the Honourable Mkhize will speak to what came from the audit outcomes of the last financial year, and that shows the lack of accountability on local government level, that shows the dire state of financial health and the lack of performance. But ordinary South Africans in the majority of municipalities around the country do not need audit reports to show them that there's a lack of service delivery. They experience it daily. And they experience this dire state daily in their daily lives. A lack of service delivery and insufficient infrastructure is contributing to poor economic growth and to the rampant levels of unemployment that we are experiencing in South Africa. It is crucial that these problems within local government is addressed to broaden economic participation and to reverse the current unemployment trend. Without necessary infrastructure and basic service delivery, which are needed for a conducive investment climate, local economic development will not take place. One of the causes of these problems is a lack of proper financial management. This causes insufficient capital expenditure, which leads to the decay of crucial infrastructure such as water, treatment plants, and roads. One example of bad financial management is 25% of municipalities that do not know what money is owed to them because of insufficient billing systems. Money which could be used to improve service delivery and infrastructure is lost due to fraud, corruption, and a lack of value for money in terms of municipal procurement. There is an overall lack of compliance with legislation, which contributes to these losses. Now, in 2018, the Standing Committee on the Auditor General went through a process of amending the Public Audit Act, and these amendments bestowed new powers on the Auditor General of South Africa in an attempt to address this dire situation where there is losses and where there's no consequences for this mismanagement which creates these losses. And these powers focused on material irregularities. And that is defined as any non-compliance with or contravention of legislation, fraud, theft, or breach of a fiduciary duty identified during an audit that resulted in or is likely to result in a material financial loss or substantial harm to the institution or to the general public. With these new powers, the AGSA has identified since the implementation in 2019, 285 material irregularities at municipal auditees. This is an estimated 8.74 billion rand in losses, and of this, 1.32 billion rand in losses were already prevented or recovered due to these new powers. The Standing Committee on the Auditor General's mandate is to ensure that the Office of the Auditor General is enabled to continue to use these powers and to ensure accountability through them. But it is a huge problem especially when we talk about municipalities, when there is non-compliance to such an extent that annual financial statements is not even submitted. 5% of municipal auditees did not submit their annual financial statements on time in this past audit cycle. There are certain municipalities that for 4 years have not submitted any financial statements. If you don't have annual financial statements, you can't be audited, and there can't be the accountability process that commences from there, that the Honourable Mkhize's committee and also committees on provincial level and also in local government in a municipality then does, because there's nothing to audit and nothing to scrutinize. But the other problem with not having annual financial statements is you don't know what your financial position is. You don't know how many assets you have. And that is why you don't do maintenance of those assets. And there's a lot of other effects of non-compliance with the submission of financial statements. The committee considered a report on these problems, these non-submission and also late submission of statements. And we are working together with the Portfolio Committee on COCTA, also the Standing Committee on Public Accounts, and also the Standing Committee on Finance to assist to address this non-compliance. Because it can't only be the Auditor General that's responsible for this. It can't also only be certain committees. It must be a holistic approach to assist and get better accountability in this regard. Another factor that is impeding the functioning of the AGSA is the outstanding debt of municipalities to the institution. What is important to note is that to protect the Auditor General's independency and impartiality, the funding model is of such an extent that it doesn't get money from the budget. Money isn't appropriated to the AGSA. The funding model works that when there's an audit, that auditee must pay for that audit. So a municipality that's audited as it's mandated by the Municipal Finance Management Act, then has to pay for that audit. And that's how the operations and sustainability of the AGSA is funded. But then municipalities and auditees in general do not pay those audit fees. Currently, we're standing at more than R1 billion in outstanding audit fees by municipalities. And that is a serious threat to the continued functioning of the AGSA. Because, as I mentioned before, there's also these new powers that's relatively new, but has to be implemented and has to be done in terms of material irregularities and also issuing accounting officers and those responsible for these losses with certificates of debt. But then there's a lot of work that needs to be done, and that has to be funded. And if there's no funding because auditees don't pay as they are supposed to pay, then there's a serious impediment on the functioning and on how those new powers can actually help to get better service delivery and accountability out there. So the committee is addressing this issue together with National Treasury to see to it that we have a sustainable funding model without sacrificing the independence of the institution. The powers of the Auditor General in terms of material irregularities can also be more effective if law enforcement bodies, such as the Special Investigating Unit, to which these cases are referred, are more effective in ensuring consequences and follow through on those investigations. The committee is meeting in the next coming month with, amongst others, the Special Investigating Unit to engage on outstanding cases in this regard. We all have a role to play in the accountability ecosystem. The AGSA is paramount to ensuring accountability, and that is why we have to protect the mandate. We have to see to it that there is proper oversight over the AGSA, that complaints are dealt with. But we also, as Parliament, has that role to play, legislatures, the executive, the media, and the public, so that we ensure that there's value for money, that there is service delivery, and that what we talk about, all these audit outcomes, actually at the end of the day, translate into service delivery and better livelihoods. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Vessels. The last presentation before we engage with yourselves will be from Dr. Zweli Mkhize, the Chairperson of the Portfolio Committee on Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs. Thank you very much, Honorable Dr. Zweli Mkhize.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mutapo, my fellow panelists, Honorable Vessels, Honorable de Villiers, and the members of the media, traditional leaders, religious leaders, and all the guests who are here with us this morning. We meet here this morning at a time when the integrity and the functionality of our local government are under immense strain. The latest audit outcomes presented to the Portfolio Committee on Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs by the Auditor General for the 2023-24 financial year confirm what has long been evident from our oversight. And that is the financial and governance crisis in our municipalities is deepening with profound consequences for service delivery and public trust. Last month, the Office of the Auditor General tabled a report showing that 59% of financial statements submitted for auditing contained material misstatements. This is despite municipalities having spent over 1.4 billion rand on consultants to prepare these statements. It's unacceptable that such an exorbitant spending yields so little value. Even more troubling is that many of these municipalities already have permanent staff tasked with performing this work. What we are seeing is not just a waste, but a failure of systems, failure of leadership and accountability, in too many of our municipalities. Total of 113 municipalities are currently operating on unfunded budgets, planning expenditure far beyond what they can credibly finance. This is reckless to the extreme. It amounts to planning for failure. It undermines infrastructure delivery, which has been identified as a key lever for economic recovery and job creation, and contributes to poor project execution, delays, cost overruns, and in many cases, substandard workmanship. As a committee, we believe that the shortage of financial skills at the local government level is at a crisis point. This is not merely a technical shortfall, but it strikes at the heart of municipal functionality and the government's ability to deliver services where they are needed the most. But let me be clear. This is not simply a question of financial literacy or technical capacity. This is not just an audit report. It's a mirror held up to our governance structures. Poor audit outcomes are often rooted in failures of political leadership, weak consequence management, and a culture of impunity. Only 16% of municipalities in the country received or achieved clean audits. This means almost 85% failed to meet even the most basic of governance standards. This directly affects our communities in areas such as sanitation, roads, water, and other essential services. And in parallel, we must gently tackle the issues of procurement, irregularities, corruption, and fraud. The use of uncompetitive and unfair supply chain processes continues unabated, as is evident in the AG's report. It is alarming that municipalities continue to award contracts to individuals employed in other spheres of government, despite explicit prohibitions in law, and this must stop. The rules exist. What is lacking is enforcement and ethical leadership. Equally concerning is the fact that 84% of municipalities under the National Debt Relief Support Program failed to meet its conditions. In fact, in one instance, we asked the municipality why that was the case. They said, well, the only way we can get any relief is if we sign to this program, even if we may not be able to afford to pay. Now, that's not only a compliance issue. It signals a complete breakdown in accountability mechanisms. Municipal councils, mayors, speakers, provincial treasuries, legislatures, the executive at the provincial level, starting from the premier, all must be held to account. Parliament, through the Portfolio Committee on Cooperative, will lead this effort. We will systematically intensify our oversight visits, focusing on the worst performing municipalities per province, and working closely with the executive at all levels to reverse this trajectory. And as I said before, the committee is no longer interested in excuses. We're calling for performance, consequences, and the prioritization of quality service delivery to our people. Beyond governance and finance, we must also address the safety and dignity of cultural practices in our communities. The Portfolio Committee last month welcomed the revised targets in 2025-2030 strategic plan of the Department of Traditional Affairs. The committee insisted that the department must revise those targets to show more concerted and meaningful efforts to eliminate all illegal customer initiation schools and reduce to zero both deaths and amputations in all schools by 2029. Let me emphasize This is not just a symbolic target, it's a constitutional and moral obligation. The loss of life and bodily harm associated with initiation rights cannot continue. Initiation should not be a death sentence. So when we speak of zero deaths and zero mutilations, we speak of the sanctity of life. We owe it to every child, every family, and every community to make that promise real. And to achieve this, the committee is pushing for a multi-departmental response. This is a non-negotiable. The Department of Health, Social Development, SAPS, Justice, and other relevant departments must work together to achieve zero deaths and mutilations, working together with the municipalities and traditional structures. We can no longer use budget constraints as a reason for failure. We must innovate where we lack capacity and where we face barriers. We must collaborate. In doing this, through a multi-departmental approach, we must include traditional councils, families, initiates, and other community structures in the civil society in our efforts. In conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, the issues highlighted here, whether audit failures, dysfunctional municipalities, or unsafe initiation practices, all point to deeper question of governance, leadership, and accountability. We cannot afford to normalize failure. We must shift decisively from recognition to consequence, from analysis to action, and from crisis management to structural reform. As a Committee of Parliament, we will work towards restoring the credibility, the capability, and the constitutional purpose of local government, not through rhetoric, but through coordinated oversight, firm accountability, and an unwavering commitment to service delivery and human dignity. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mkhize. Ladies and gentlemen, those are the three presentations from the Luanda. Those are the three presentations from the three committees. The Standing Committee on Auditor General does not necessarily belong to the governance cluster, but we included it given the importance of the recent audit reports, so that they can reflect on that as well. But those are the presentations from the three honorable chairpersons. This is the time now for engagement with the chairpersons of the three committees. As per usual, I'm going to start with the questions from the members of the media, and then once we have exhausted that round, and then we will go to the engagement with the stakeholders. Honorable chairpersons, in your responses, if you are close to the mic, you can use it on the desk, but if it is a little bit too far from you, the mic on the podium is still available for you during the responses. Members of the media, you will be the first, and then you'll be the second. Ebra, did you raise your hand? Okay, yeah, you'll be the second. Any other hand from the media? Babalo? Okay, in that order, 3 hands. Yeah.
Thanks, Moloto. Good morning, Jason Felix from News 24. Just have 2 questions, one to the Honorable Mkhize and to the Honorable de Villiers. Chair, Mr. Mkhize, firstly, we've seen that municipalities are really in a dire state. It's really bad this year, judging from the latest Auditor General report. There are municipalities even in the Western Cape that have regressed. Some of the smaller outlying municipalities outside of Cape Town. The city of Cape Town was the only metro out of 8 metros to have achieved a clean audit. I didn't hear you speak much about what the committee plans to do of fixing these problems at municipalities. We know from previous reports, I think it was in 2022, that there are 64 dysfunctional municipalities at that time, where services have completely collapsed. What is the committee planning to do to rectify the situation with the limitations that you as a committee have? Then my question to Mr. de Villiers, on the matter of ghost employees, this has obviously been a big problem, especially at PRASA, if I remember correctly, the rail agency. Which government departments and government agencies are you targeting, or are the biggest culprits, given the committee meeting that you had last week with the Department of Public Service and the National Treasury? Thank you.
Thank you, Ibra.
Hi, I'm Abra Barbie of the SABC. I just want to know, on the issue of consultants as well, do the chairpersons have any comment? Because the AG also made comments about the use of consultants within departments. And I think she made a comment along the lines of, once consultants are appointed, then CFOs and finance staff basically take a step back and you don't hear from them again, and they leave everything to the consultants to do. Do you have anything to say about that?
The question was directed at all the three. Okay. Babala.
Good morning. My name is Babalo Ndenza from EWN. Just clarity from Honorable de Villiers on the ghost workers. I know the audit is still, outstanding, but do you have any idea of the level of employee or the level of ghost worker? Is it mostly entry level? Does it mostly target your health department nurses and DBE teachers, or is it spread out across the board? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ibra, second bite.
Sorry, I forgot to ask earlier on. Just also in terms of whistleblowers, I mean, you hear all the time that there are people within departments, within entities who want to whistleblow, who know what is going on. I mean, these things aren't hidden, but they still don't feel protected. And I know that there's legislation dealing with the protection of whistleblowers. It was discussed at one of the G20 meetings earlier this year. Any comment on that, please?
And that is directed at three of them again. All right. Arthur?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mutabu. It's Arthur from Heart FM. Dr. Mkhize, I know that municipalities as well as provincial governments, there are two spheres of government. I just want to find out from you, how long does it take, or it should take, for the provincial government to intervene, for example, in terms of Section 109, to intervene and assist a municipality? Should they wait until there is a crisis? Because sometimes it goes to that an extent. In terms of, what would you suggest in terms of how long does a provincial government or national government needs to intervene to help a municipality? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm going to allow the chairpersons to respond to this first round, beginning with Honorable de Villiers, followed by Honorable Vessels, and then Honorable Dr. Mkhize.
Thank you very much, Program Director, and thank you for the questions. There are two questions which I think are a little bit linked, and that's the one about what departments will be targeted, and maybe also the question of the scope of the problem. We see it. I think the reality is, if you look at PRASA, if you look at the Gauteng Department of Health, and also the Mpumalanga Department of Education, where there's been hundreds of ghost workers found, if that serves as a kind of a sample, then I think it's pretty clear that there are thousands of ghost workers on the system, and part of the issue is that it's very decentralized, the way state employees get employed. So every single department has its own mechanisms and its own staffing procedures. And there's not a centralized, there's not been a centralized audit or human resource management practice in the state to catch net, to try and identify all of these ghost workers. So quite frankly, it is impossible actually to know what department is the problem the worst at, where is the problem the biggest. The reality is every single department, state agency, level of government and state-owned enterprise that we have probably has ghost workers on their payroll. And we need to look at this problem from a national Department of Public Service Administration together with a treasury perspective, obviously involving the Auditor General and COCTA as well, Dr. Mkhize and his team, because that's also where a lot of the ghost employees are at. But the whole point of this exercise and this audit is that we actually need to establish the scope of how big the problem is and in what departments there might be the biggest problems. What we do know is potentially it is the public service positions which are easier to hide, which are being targeted. So if you can imagine posts in the state where people don't work in offices, where they perhaps are on the landscaping or any of these outside works, that's where it's almost the easiest to create ghost workers, because some of those public servants don't actually report to offices like normal office workers. But the reality is it's probably in every single department in the state, and that's the whole point of this exercise, is we need to establish the seriousness, the scope, and also the action plan to deal with ghost workers. On consultants, I would just like to say that the whole point of building a professional merit-based state and public service is that you shouldn't really then need consultants. And if our public service was filled with the suitably qualified professionals, then you probably would see a massive decline in the use of consultants. And that is why, as a committee, we support the professionalization of the state and the current framework that is in place for that. Because if we create a merit-based public service, professional public service, then this use, very expensive use of consultants will also go down. And then just on the whistleblowers, specifically pertaining to the public service and administration, where we deal mostly with human resource and personnel and staffing issues of the state. The Public Service Commission is actually, I would say, the ultimate protector of whistleblowers when it comes to employment practices in the state. And that is why the Public Service Commission Amendment Bill, which was just passed in the National Assembly and passed by our committee and is now in the National Council of Provinces, is such an important piece of legislation, because it corrects the situation where the Public Service Commission is currently structured under the Department of Public Service and Administration, where they should be constitutionally independent in the same way the Auditor General is independent and the same way the Public Protector is independent. So whistleblower protection in the Public Service and Administration will hopefully see a much more strengthened and independent environment when the Public Service Commission Amendment Bill is passed through the National Council of Provinces and is ascended by the President and put into practice. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Let me first just touch on Jason's question, because it actually relates to the consultant's question and the whole framework, or the whole environment actually as well. If there's no consequences for transgressions, we'll never address the situation. There will always be this culture of mismanagement. There will always be losses occur due to corruption, fraud, exploitation by consultants, by contractors, and so forth, because there's no real consequences. And the problem with consequences, one of the problems currently, especially if I talk to the powers of the Auditor General in terms of issuing certificates of debt, because you must remember that the amendments to the Public Audit Act does make it possible for the Auditor General to, when an accounting officer does not act, does not install consequence management when there's transgressions, the Auditor General can then issue a certificate of debt to that accounting officer and actually keep that person personally liable for the losses. But what happens now is the very fast turnover in local government and especially accounting officers. You have a municipal manager, and then there's something that happens. There's a transgression. There's letters and investigations, and then all of a sudden the person resigns and is appointed somewhere else. And then the AGSA says, but we can't issue a certificate of debt because it's a different person now. And this happens all the time. And if we don't get a method of really ensuring accountability and consequences for those transgressions, we won't have a culture shift where we have officials that will stop doing this, because people just see there's no consequences ever for any of these transgressions. And we all have a role to play in that, because it's not a very easy answer, as you have this situation with ever-changing, fast turnover, and people that's then not out personally accountable for that. And we'll really have to look at the whole legal framework of how people can be still held accountable, even though they are not in those positions. And if you do that, you'll have a shift towards merit-based appointments as well, because there will also be consequences for people not being able to do their jobs, not being able to prepare financial statements, not being able to actually do that what they are appointed for, and then we won't need consultants anymore. With regards to whistleblowing, something that's, I think, just to add on what the Honourable de Villiers said, there is a process that started in 2023 with regards to the reforming the whistleblowing legislative framework, because we do have pieces of legislation, but there is inadequacies. And this is currently with the Portfolio Committee on Justice, and they are currently looking at that. We had a debate in a mini plenary last Friday, also with the focus on whistleblowing and protection of whistleblowers. So it's a process, and I think that reform of the framework is very, very important, so that you don't only have the protection in the one legislation, but that there is approach and that all the different components do at the end of the day offer necessary protection, and that there's no loopholes, because currently there's a lot of loopholes that on a labor perspective and in public service is occurring. So that needs to be addressed, and I think Parliament is working on that. So that must also be directed to the Portfolio Committee on Justice, where that framework is currently. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the questions. I think you will notice from the submission of the Honorable de Villiers and Honorable Vessels that there are a few areas of our concentration. The main function of Parliament is to ensure accountability. whoever is assigned the legislative power to act to correct certain things has to be made to account for any transgressions. In this case, this is where we're going to be focusing. The second issue we're focusing on is the area of consequence management. If anything has been done incorrectly, there has to be consequences, and we need to hold those responsible to be able to explain what consequence management has been effected, and if not, why not. And they need to satisfy Parliament that in fact they have performed their responsibility in terms of what the legislation requires of them. The third one relates to ensuring the professional and competent civil service. Again, this is a requirement by Constitution that we all agree there has to be a professional civil service that conducts activities based on professional expertise, ethical leadership, accountability within the structure of the government system, as well as accountable to the public to which they are supposed to be delivering services. On all of the government, or on all of the parliamentary committees, we have to ensure of that. Now, a question has been asked specifically about the outcomes, the municipal audit outcomes are bad, and that we've seen even the deterioration with regression even in some in the Western Cape, and also that there's only one metro that has got a clean outcome. What do we do to fix those metros? Now, we have a major objection to the behavior of the metros, because all of them should be able to achieve clean audits. The fact that 3 have unqualified with statements, with findings, and that the other 4 are qualified is unacceptable. And the reason why it's unacceptable is that largely the issue that relates to municipalities not being able to fulfill the requirements of the Auditor General is that some of them do not have adequate skills to manage the finances and the entire administrative and governance system. That is really because they normally are either very weak, poor, and they've got low revenue base, and therefore are unable to compete in attracting professional expertise that is required to ensure that there is adequate oversight and fulfillment of the financial management and other systems of government. But the metropolitan councils cannot explain that they've got such a shortage. They are the most competitive, they've got all the resources, and therefore no metropolitan council can explain why they could not find a CFO with the necessary qualification, because they cannot be outcompeted by any other municipality. They've got all the resources. They are carrying the municipalities are carrying 48% of the budget that goes to municipalities and carry service delivery to 46% of the population. And therefore, if they are not well managed, there's a huge amount of resources and population that is not well serviced. And therefore, we will be following on each of them with a new approach, which I will outline a little bit as we go along, which basically is about getting the metros to explain why they could actually run vacancies, why they would not have been able to employ the necessary expertise. And we think some of them, the issue goes back not to the inability of the administrative as well as the political leadership to lead properly. It is that inability that creates difficulties in the management of proper governance systems that results in this kind of problem. And at the end of it, you cannot find an explanation as to why a metro could not employ a professional engineer to run the maintenance and the planning of infrastructure service delivery programs. It is not possible. So we will have to focus on that particular issue. In relation to the general problem of dysfunctionality, we have been discussing this issue with the Minister and the Department of Cooperative in particular, and have conducted oversight visits to various municipalities. And when we do, we bring in the National Treasury and the Auditor General, as well as the National Cooperative, as well as the provincial executive in the form of the MECs, as well as their provincial cooperative department, so that we've got a complete picture as to where the problems are. In terms of the reports that we have received, there has been a shift in terms of improvement on the functionality of the municipalities from 16 dysfunctional municipalities to 16 which were functional. The number has been reported to have gone up to 61, which means there is some work that's been done in that regard and which we have to acknowledge. But our focus as we move from municipality to municipality is to look at what has been done to deal with those issues. And we normally go into the specifics. So if we do an oversight visit to a municipality, we have to first look at the question of the structure of the administration. Starting from the political, we want to know if there is stability at the political level, particularly because you would find that instability arises when there's a conflict amongst the political public representatives at a political level. And here it can be inter-party tensions, intra-party tensions, but all the same, that sometimes reflect in the divisions and poor performance of the administrative structure. Then when we go to the administrative structure, we actually go through an audit even before we visit. We want to know what is the qualification of the municipal manager and how long they've been in service. We want to know the chief financial officer and all the various directors. We need to know before we look at their functions and their performance. We want to see whether we agree that their level of qualification allows them to perform the way that the municipality is supposed to do that, to perform. And therefore, we have to then match the performance of those, that expertise as reported, with the performance that we see either from the Auditor General or from the Cooperative, to say, if that is the level of your qualification, then what is stopping you from performing the way that you should? And then in some instances, we've actually had to hold the municipality to explain why, for example, a municipality could have for 4 years a disclaimer in terms of the Auditor General's report. But at the same time, you've got the same CFO that has been serving throughout the 5 years. Why has there been no consequence? Because certainly somebody should have actually been acted upon in this regard. So we have to go into those specifics now when we go through this discussion. And I must say that when we do so, we would want to change the approach not only to deal with the municipality, but also to actually look at the provincial executive as to what they have been doing to allow the deterioration that we are now experiencing. Now, having said so, then I will come back to that point because that question has been asked in a different way again later, and I think it's a very important question to address. But before I get to that, let me deal with the question of the consequences. Sorry, the use of consultants. Now, what has been difficult with the use of consultants is that when you look at the report of the Auditor General, they are saying, the Auditor General is saying, if you look at the numbers of consultants or the percentage of consultants that were used in 2013, 2014, that was around 82% of municipalities that used the consultants. And currently, they believe that the number of consultants being used in the current situation, again, is comparable to what we had in 2013 and 2014. And their conclusion is that, of course, the use of consultants, in most of the instances, they've brought the consultants to provide skills where their finance units don't have those skills. And in some instances, they've hired the consultants to bridge the gap where they've got the unit, but they've got inadequate capacity, therefore they bridge the gap. In some instances, they've got vacancies, so they use the consultants to close the vacancies. But having said so, their finding is that the percentage use of consultants in 2013 and 2023-24 is the same, or very closely related. Now, they are then concluding that what was brought in as supposed to be a temporary solution to a problem that the municipalities were supposed to resolve has become a permanent fixture. And yet you still don't get the outcomes that are expected. And therefore, we need to go into this. The issue that's been raised by the colleagues here, the Honorable de Villiers and Honorable Vessels, about ensuring a competent and professional civil service is about all this. If you had a competent chief financial officer and a financial management system team, then there would not be a need to bring someone from outside. But when they are not performing properly, then that's the problem. Now, why are they not performing properly? Were they employed without the necessary competence, or are they competent, but for some reason nobody is supervising them to ensure that they perform properly? That is the issue. That's where we're going to be focusing as the committee as we go around dealing with the various municipalities. Now, and I'm raising this because I think it was Atta, I couldn't quite get, but the question was, how long should it take for the provincial government to intervene in the case of these challenges? Precisely the focus of our oversight now. So we expect that when we go to the next phase of oversight, we will have to sit down with the Speaker of the provincial legislature, not just the Minister of COGTA in the national government, but we also have to go to the Speaker to ask them what is it that they've been doing when the situation has been deteriorating. We have to deal with the Premier and the MEC before we even get to the Speaker of the municipality and the Mayor and the team of the municipality. That is because there are various legislation that allows us space to be able to deal with this. Now, in terms of the MFMA, we actually have a provision for oversight by the provincial municipality, by the provincial government over the municipality, as well as reports that have to be generated, which need to be tabled to the executive, and then we need the Speaker to demand that those reports must be tabled and therefore they must be acted upon, so that there's action that is actually effected to deal with this problem. Part of the new legislation that is coming through, which is being tabled, is focusing on what we call the interventions, monitoring, over the municipalities by the provincial as well as national departments. Here, the major focus is on what we call the early warning systems, because a lot of the things that go wrong, we need a system that must be able to pick up before things are so bad that in fact things are deteriorating. And then in terms of section 154 of the Constitution, both national and provincial government need to intervene and give support. And here the Constitution mandates that the provincial and national government should use legislative and all other means to support the municipalities to make sure that they can perform what they need to do. So to do that, we need to then make sure that we have oversight over both national and provincial governments, that they must do what they are expected to do in terms of intervening. But the key, that something that's been missing, has been early warning systems to pick up early enough. And it's been important also to deal with the early warning systems, because there's always been a tussle between the municipalities and the provincial government as to whether when they intervene, they've intervened correctly, timeously, and for the right reason. And sometimes there would be a suspicion that the provincial government wants to just exercise in a high-handed way its authority in terms of Section 139. And Section 139 is about how a provincial government must intervene in a municipality. And that has to be taken right through to the NCOP to ratify that intervention and to remove any sort of suspicions, because that has been raised a few times. We need to then be able to say we all agree on the early warning systems that have been transgressed to justify intervention. And therefore the timing as to by which time you would be able to get when you get that legislation in place. Quite often the question of whether it is the right time or not becomes a sense of a subjective judgment of the provincial executive that can be questioned often by the municipality. We've just been dealing with the case of Machabeng here, where a court order went out for government to intervene, for the provincial government to intervene. And then you also got someone amongst the municipal, the speaker raising a question as to whether they should, that's how the message, the intervention need to be carried on or not. And then of course they'd gone through court to fight about this issue. And so you want to deal with this issue in such a way that there is no question about the correctness of the timing of the intervention of the provincial government. Now, the Section 139 of obviously allows the provincial government to intervene. But the argument mainly raised also by SALGA has been, now that you've decided to intervene, did you consider Section 154, which says you should have given us support? Now you want to come in and intervene before you've actually given us the necessary support. Was your support adequate? Now this new bill must also assess that. Did you support the municipality adequately so that when they fail, you are able to say it is your failure as a municipality that requires intervention. It is not the failure of the provincial and national government to give the necessary support. We've now seen the advent of what is called the presidential working group that has gone in. And when we asked how are this, and they said, look, it's part of trying to address the Section 154 support that is needed for purposes of this intervention. And of course, Section 100 empowers the national government to intervene in the event the provincial government is failing to address its functions. And this could also involve their inability to oversee municipalities. But again, these interventions have actually been in place in a number of areas. One of the challenges, which is why, again, the question is important, is that there are a number of municipalities that have had serial interventions for the past 10 years and they've not improved. There are other municipalities that when they've gone through Section 139 and they are not improving, the question is it the municipality's failure or is it the failure of the intervention that actually is causing them to fail? And therefore the question of the competence of the administrators who have been handling that situation comes in. And again, this bill is addressing those particular issues. And we're saying therefore that as Parliament, we want to zoom into the gaps that has made the intervention either too late or too ineffective or delayed or a question about whether it was advised or not. That legislation is being processed at this point. Now, when we go on to the municipalities, when we go to address this issue, we have what we call audit action plans. Now, there are a number of municipalities that have not even implemented what the Auditor General said needs to be implemented. We need to know when they did that, why is it that there's not been any action? But we also want to know what was the provincial government and legislature doing when that municipality was failing to act on these particular issues. So that oversight approach is what we're going to be focusing on as the committee, which is slightly different from where in the past you just want to ask the minister what has the minister been doing, but we want to go further down, go into the municipality and also go to the provincial government and get everybody right along the value chain to account for the outcomes that we are having at this point. So I would then say that the fact that the Auditor General can report to us and say these outcomes are not different to what there was last year, we as a committee have asked ourselves the question, if that is the case, what is it that is different that we're going to do in holding everyone account? And I want to say that the approach is going to be different as we're going to be holding the entire value chain now accountable, but also we're supporting the amendment that must improve the intervention so that everyone, it must be clear who is at fault when things have gone wrong in the municipality. And there must be consequences, there must be accountability. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairpersons, for very comprehensive responses. May I check if there's any questions from the stakeholders present? And the members of the media, if they need follow-up, they can also use this opportunity. All right, let me begin with Jason. I think you are the only. Are you from the media? Oh, okay. I think you will be the first, and then you will be the second. You'll be the third, the fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth, in that order. I ask that because there's quite a number of interest in engagement if we can be very short in terms of the question so that we can still have sufficient time for the chairpersons to respond. I know that we are going to lose one chairperson at around 1 o'clock, so that he can be able to respond before he leaves the panel. Yeah, in that order. Sure.
Hi, Theo Lintember from Independent Media. My questions to Dr. Mkhize and Mr. Wessels, the two of you can decide who might be best to answer this. So, Mr. Wessels, when you were talking, you mentioned that there was a number of municipalities, one of which hadn't submitted an audit report for about 4 years. Is it possible to perhaps identify which, if not which the municipalities are, perhaps the provinces which are most affected by this lack of submission in audit reports? Thank you.
Thank you very much, short and sweet. I hope that will follow in that particular. And yeah, just the name and the organization. If you can put on the mic.
Thank you, Chair. Mine is to Dr. Mkhize. Doc, thank you for visiting us. After we met with you, we do have some responses from the Department of Justice about our submissions for the House of Tradition to be recognized in the Western Cape. And also there's a form that we have from your department. Number 2, about initiations, I can proudly say here in Western Cape, I think we are number 1 in the country, because in the Western Cape, there are no casualties. All our initiation schools are running perfectly. But what we need now, we don't see the support and more education from the department. We are just on our own. So I've got the principals with me that are looking after those initiation schools. So my question to you is that, was this your doing that we did have a call from the Department of Justice If yes, we just want to say thank you to you, Doc. God bless you.
Thank you. The third question.
I am John from the Class Door House, Sharikwa. Just a question to any of the panel members there that just with regards to accountability to perpetrators or criminals that infiltrate as ghost workers, or those that add them as ghost workers, and for municipalities that also not perform. Those municipal managers, I think the Honorable Vessels referred to them just moving out of that seat and moving into a different seat and not being held accountable. How does the government or national government, what plans do they have to hold those people accountable? Can they be blacklisted, or he also mentioned that you can be given the financial debt of whatever the municipality suffered. How do we follow those people? Because obviously that element of criminality will follow that person, whatever position he holds in government. So it doesn't matter if he's now not the MM anymore. He maybe moves to a different portfolio, but maybe in the same municipality. That person still needs to be followed or blacklisted by the government so that he doesn't infiltrate other departments. My question then is, what do we do to follow those people and get them totally out of the system? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Question, hand number 4.
I'm Gundo Mahandana. My question is directed to the Honorable Dr. Mkhize. It's on underlying persistence poor performance. With the 2023-2024 audit outcome, it's showing that only 16% municipalities managed to achieve clean record, with municipalities like Free State showing no clean record since 2016. I'm glad to hear that you have mentioned some interventions on the issue, but my question is there an estimated time frame on dealing with this issue given how chronic it is, and how do we follow up on the progress? Thank you.
Thank you. Hand number 5.
Greetings in the house. Thank you so much for the opportunity. So I just have a question for all three royalties there. The first one is, you can just reflect how long you've been in government. And then based on that reflection, the kind of challenges you are reporting on today, they have been there in all other administration before you. So if you had everything within your power to make all these things go away within 12 months period, because your term is ending, shortly. But if you had everything you need, what would it be? Because we need to imagine solutions that are radical at this hour. Because the 3 departments are the ones that matter the most. If we want to test government and say we have good leadership, we have entrusted you. This is the highest office. There's no other savior. You are the Messiah of this hour as the 7th administration. So what do you need to do? What support do you need from us to make all these problems go away? That's what I would like you to imagine, because that's what we need to do. So each of you can reflect on it, respond on it, because whatever you say, this is what we need to do. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think just also to clarify, as we normally do, I know that there's sometimes confusion amongst the public between the independent arms of the state. This is a legislative arm of the state. It is Parliament, which is separate from the executive arm of the state. So the chairpersons here, they represent the oversight committees of Parliament, which is an independent legislative arm of the state responsible for conducting oversight and overseeing the executive action. So I think they will answer it in a manner that it is possible. the questions that you have asked from the perspective of Parliament in terms of their responsibility to conduct oversight over the departments that you are talking about, but not representing, because they can't represent the executive arm of the state or the departments that they are overseeing in terms of their actions. But I think I do get where your question is coming from, and I think they will be able to deal with it accordingly. And number 6. Okay, we'll jump it to. Okay.
Yes, thank you, Chair. My name is Caleb from Fish and Land. I would like to ask my question to Mr. Jan de Villiers concerning how many people have been arrested so far, or do we have any case in court after finding out about those ghost workers? Thank you.
Thank you. Short and sweet. Hand number 8.
I have a few questions. Damaris Kiewit from the Community Engagement Unit.
Was your hand up?
Yes, I thought you counted me in.
Because 8 is that, and then 9, we had 9 hands. So we had the last 8 and 9 were at the back, but please proceed.
Yes, I am going to. Thank you, Program Director. To all 3, but first to DPSA.
Can you start with your name?
Damaris Kiewit, the Community Engagement Unit at the University of the Western Cape.
Thank you.
The HR audit that is outstanding for years. If we talk about ghost workers, it means the lack of an HR audit is the reality of the day. And I think throughout legislation and the legislative frameworks, a lot of organizations raise these questions in the provincial parliament and never get a satisfactory answer. So maybe if we as the public can know what an HR audit across departments look like, will that then eliminate ghost workers? And then, Cocta, open government processes. This has been coming since 2011. Cocta ran with this initiative, but I don't think we got very far, because at the moment DPSA is the custodian for the open government partnership. And if we an open government, will that not make corruption shrink? If we have open ownership, where government, civil society and business works as a collective, because where there's corruption, there's parties, and where there's parties, there's people. And so, like one of the previous people asked, what is it that we as citizens needs to give to ensure we clean up the mess that we currently sit with? Because if we look at state capture of 287 billion, and we look at 6.4 million on ghost workers, it raises a serious concern. And then we have 25% owed to local government, and because of the insufficient billing system, again, citizens needs to suffer. And so as a collective, what needs to give for the 7th Parliament to make it sustainable, sufficient, effective as oversight? Can we see that the 7th Parliament for the next 5 years will stick to their constitutional obligation as oversight and make it work for the citizens of this country? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Hands number, now you are 9 and 10 in that order.
Thank you, Chair and Honourable Chairpersons. A highly informative session. I'm Rachel Fisher from the Organisation Undoing Tax Abuse. Now, my question potentially to all 3 of you is with regards to the transgression of the financial municipal managers and then the issuance of the certificate of debt. Would it not be possible to consider a form of a national database in collaboration with the PSA where these individuals can be listed? Of course, they will not be very happy with this, but at least this does put the onus on them as the individual to respond or to refute. And then having this national database makes it available for new employees or HR, to screen them first, as the gentleman mentioned about blacklisting. We already have the Consumer Protection Bureau that has a similar purpose. So surely there could be some collaboration between different entities.
Thank you, Chair. I'm Shakila Rahman, President of Truth Party, and also medical consultant of Shakila Rahman Consultancy. This is for Honorable de Villiers. You spoke about ghost workers. I'm actually medically qualified, and so I know how the whole system works in the state hospitals regarding how people are employed and HR and all that. So all these past years, there were no ghost workers before. So where did all these ghost workers come from all of a sudden? Another thing as well, you spoke of digital transformation. You said that for digital transformation, you need digital transformation for things to become better, which includes biometrics and the need to eliminate so-called ghost workers. What you fail to advise is that this digital transformation is actually one of the new world order agendas for 2030 and 2063, which a lot of the South African citizens are actually against. And the GNU government is actually going ahead with this and many other of the new world order agendas without their knowledge and without their permission. You are actually covering up, GNU is actually covering up the new world order agendas with so-called ghost workers, with a lot of other things as well. And this digital transformation, including biometrics, is actually it's a total world control and total surveillance of every individual, which is against the constitutional rights of every individual and every citizen of this country, of the Republic of South Africa. And instead of providing these contracts for digital transformation, are all being awarded to foreign countries like the US, in Europe. So why, instead of giving them the contracts, why are we not training and educating our own South African citizens as well? This is creating jobs. This is employing them. This is upskilling them. Why is the Republic of South Africa giving our contracts to foreigners, to foreign companies?
Thank you very much. Honorable Chairpersons, those are the questions. There's quite a number of questions dealing with ghosts, and I feel like your committees have got a serious responsibilities of ghost busting. Honorable de Villiers, I know that you are supposed to leave at 1. You've got 5 minutes to respond to all the questions before you leave. I will start with you.
Thank you very much, Program Director, and thank you very much for the questions. It's appreciated, and it's all important questions. I'm going to start with the question about consequences. What consequences are there? Which is actually linked to a question that was later asked about how many people have been arrested so far. I think the reality is that we don't know how many ghost workers there are. We don't know who's involved, and not enough people have been arrested so far, to be quite frankly. In fact, I am, as committee chair, not aware of a single person that has been arrested thus far, in terms of the creation of ghost workers. And that obviously is what needs to change. I mean, make no mistake about it, ghost workers, and there was it also tags on to the question of, the comment was made that there never was any ghost workers. I wouldn't go that far. I think the practice has been there for, we suspect, for many years, but it's gone largely unnoticed because the systems were not there, the audits were not there to pick it up. And I think we must not fool ourselves. The people behind the creation of ghost workers are syndicates, they are criminal organizations within the state. They work together. These aren't rogue individuals who are just taking a chance. It is a symptom of corruption within the state that is highly organized. And I think if I can then link that to the question of, you know, what must we do? You know, and there's a saying, for every complicated problem, there's an answer that is clear and simple and wrong, because it is just not a simple. There is no simple solution. But if I was forced to choose one simple solution, as you said, if I had all the power, then the reality is the professionalization of the state could be as close to a magic bullet as you can get, because corruption is committed by people. Failing state departments fail because of people. Every failure in the state is because of people. So if I could do one thing in the next 12 months, as to your question, then it would be to make sure that every single person that works for the state is doing their role because they are well qualified and have been appointed on merit, and that they are professional, that the state is staffed with people that have the capabilities and the qualifications for the jobs they need to do. Because then service delivery will not be an issue. Then corruption will not be an issue. So if I had a magic bullet, that would be my answer. The revolving door practice question. So when I talk about the revolving door, it is the practice of people escaping accountability by just moving from government department to government department. That is a symptom of the lack of a centralized human resource management database. We don't have in the state one single HR resource management system that currently has the capability to control this revolving door where people escape responsibility. Our committee has asked for it, and it has been registered and is one of the priorities of the Department of Public Service and Administration, and it is in the process of being developed to make sure that once someone is busy with a discipline, just for an example, is busy with a disciplinary in one department, they don't escape accountability by just moving to another department of state, because that is a real problem and it does happen. There was a question which I think I already answered about where does ghost workers come from? Well, they come from people. They come from criminal syndicates who abuse the system to line their own pockets. That's where they come from. Ma'am, your question about digital transformation, and you said you're in the health, you're involved in the health sector as well. Now, when our committee did an oversight visit in Northwest and Gauteng, one of the many failings we saw in the state hospitals is the absolute unacceptable long queue systems which you have. Queues to get medicine, queues to just be helped by doctors. And I think that's one of the best examples of how digitizing systems could bring efficiency in hospitals. So I think the state has a responsibility to obviously responsibly manage biometric data and identities with the absolute proviso that your information is always your information. The state only is the caretaker of that information. There should obviously be no place for the mismanagement or the irresponsible management of any individual's personal information. But the reality is that when it comes to service delivery, we need digital transformation because it is the way to get more efficient services to people. And And that, I think, Program Director, is most of my questions.
Yeah, no, thank you very much, Honorable de Villiers. Dr. Mkhize, you want to? Oh, I saw you being quite enthusiastic to come in, so I thought, let me, before you leave your chain of thought, I thought, let me. Okay, Honorable Vessels.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. Mkhize.
Thank you very much, Honorable de Villiers. You are excused.
Let me first
Yes, thank you. Apologies, Chair, but I'm going to become the ghost now, so please excuse me.
Let me respond to the question on the non-submission of financial statements. The municipality that's guilty that has since 2016-17 not submitted a financial statement is Maluti Apufong in Free State. That's the towns of Harrismith, Kestel, that part of the country. And then the majority of municipalities that has not submitted is in Free State. Then there's one in the Northern Cape and one in KwaZulu-Natal. With regards to the blacklisting, also the question on the databases thereof, the problem is that a lot of these officials have not been found guilty of anything. And the disciplinary process, as Honorable de Villiers also explained now, is important if there's an ongoing disciplinary process. That can be done. And that's something that that committee is pushing for. But the hard reality is that in a lot of cases, the disciplinary hearings never commence, or they are left, they are they don't continue after the person resigns. So there's a hanging disciplinary process, and then the person resigns, and then the disciplinary stops. And a lot of municipalities say that they can't continue with the disciplinary process because the person is not in their service anymore. Obviously, that is not substantiated in law. You can continue, you should continue, and you should also recover any money that's lost. If there was a financial loss to a municipality, you can't say just because the person resigned, you're not going to do anything to recover that lost funds. And that's something that we should all work to, and to place the emphasis on that is not how it should be working, and there should be consequences. On the question, what is needed then, is exactly that. But from my perspective and my committee's perspective, I think our most important task is to ensure that the Auditor General's functionality and independence are protected. And currently, we have a very good functioning AGSA. We have a very proper and fit office bearer in that position. But we do know from recent history with another Chapter 9 institution that it can very, very easily and quickly change. And that is our task, is to see to it that we don't lose a functioning Auditor General, because a lot of the accountability and what accountability is based on will be completely lost if there's any problem with the appointment of a new AG, because that is going to occur in 2027. That's less than 2 years from now. We are going to get a new individual in that position. So we have to see to it that the appointment process is done correctly, but also that the institution is protected, regardless of the incumbent, that the checks and balances are always there. And that's the functioning and the task of the National Assembly of Parliament in terms of the Public Audit Act. And I think if we continue, that's from our perspective to do that, we protect the future so that we can, with all the other, in the whole ecosystem of accountability, we then protect the future so that there can be improvement with regards to consequences and accountability. I think that's it from my side. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Vessels. Dr. Mkhize.
Thank you very much, Chairperson, and thanks to the members for the questions. The first question was about lack of submissions. Here we have the following municipalities. They were in the 2023-24, we had the place in Northern Cape, Kagisana Molopa, Northwest, Kopanong in Free State, Mafube in the Free State, Maselonyana in the Free State, Mhukare in the Free State, and other delays were in Machabeng in the Free State, Msunduzi in KwaZulu-Natal, and Tabachweu in Mpumalanga. Those were the ones that were 10 outstanding audits. Now, but just to give you a sense, this problem of late submission is a bit bigger than that. The late submissions in the past 3 years affected a number of municipalities such as Mafube, Malute Apofung in the Free State, and then Kopanong, Free State, Maselonyana, Free State, Mohukare, Free State, Ubuntu in the Northern Cape, and Makado in Limpopo. Those have been in the past 3 years implicated in this. But also, just to also give you a sense of all the municipalities that submit, it's only 26%, in other words, 63 municipalities that submit and get clean audit assessment straight from the submission of the municipality. The additional 140, the additional 46 to make 140, actually they get to submit and get better outcomes or good outcomes after the intervention of the Auditor General's office. In other words, if you didn't have the pressuring support, the persistence of the Auditor General, there would have been 46 municipalities that would have actually not been seen to have submitted as expected by the Auditor General. So there's a lot of work that has to be done by the Auditor General to get municipalities to perform what they're supposed to do on their own. So when we deal with the question of lack of submission, we just need to understand that it's a whole range. It's not just the one of lack of submission. Then the Bishop, thank you very much for your feedback. Certainly, we would like to continue working together with your team to see how far we can take the matters forward. In relation to the issue of the recognition, that matter has to be dealt with by the Department of COPTA, in which case all your submissions, we have asked that you should share some of them. We'll continue pushing them through to the right department so that we can assist in the process. And we're pleased to see that there's some progress that we are recording in this regard. And we also thank you for all the work that you do in relation to the casualties in the initiation process. In this case, we would like to continue to work with everyone to make sure that we save the lives of the young initiates and that there's no mutilation and that there is no death associated with this, because it's a custom. It's not supposed to result in death. And ultimately, the responsibility is to be taken by the initiates themselves, the parents, the community around it, the leaders, political leaders, traditional leaders, religious leaders, and so leaders in the civil society. Or everybody need to work together, because we cannot afford one more death. And that I want to thank you for that route, for that support. And we will continue to interact, and where we need to assist each other, we will want to look at those issues. The issue around the municipal managers who get involved in criminal activities and still find themselves being able to move from one municipality to the other. This matter has been discussed quite strongly, and now we have a process whereby the people who are in the municipal management who get involved in criminal activities or investigations or internal disciplinary processes have to be recorded, and the national minister will then be on the lookout for such names when there's a need for approving some of the managers, so that someone who is implicated in the wrongdoing cannot themselves be appointed in another municipality until that matter has been cleared. It has been noted that in some instances, people resign ahead of the judgment, and therefore they end up with no criminal or a record that indicates transgression, and that the committee has been raising this matter as well very strongly to make sure that the minister and the department ensures that we do not have people who are implicated being part of the appointment into a new post that's been advertised. The next question, you'll excuse me, I mixed some of the names, so I don't want to mispronounce anybody's name. From here, it's a bit difficult to get the names. The question was about poor performance, no clean records, no record of clean audits in the Free State, and the estimated time frame. All I can say is that we have actually identified the Free State as the first of the municipalities that we will be visiting. As soon as the opening of our oversight period, we'll actually be visiting the Free State. That's one. We'll obviously have the committee prioritizing in terms of the outcomes, so that we are able to involve the entire provincial and municipal leadership on the issues of accountability. So we will actually be moving in this regard to address those issues. But in the next oversight period for the parliament, we'll be addressing these issues. The very interesting question that you asked, and I understand that Mr. Mtapo was clarifying from a technical perspective, but your question is a much more broader question, and the question is, what would we need to do if we were to get everything in order? I think what would for us work would be a situation where having passed the legislation that gives you early warning symptoms, and having clarified the timelines needed to act, then we need to then emphasize on our side the role of oversight over all the municipality. But I think if our system was able to move quickly to ensure that the council is able to take responsibility, and that the municipality can be obliged to act where there's need for action, then of course that would take us closer towards ensuring that there's accountability. I would say we also need the engagement of political leadership. Most of the municipalities are led on the basis of a party proportional representation. The political parties have to take responsibility for the poor performance of municipalities where they have the majority or where they have the coalition that is in charge, because it is the political leadership, the ability or inability to intervene, to hold the management, municipal management into account. It's a political function. So here, what we need on our side would be political will of all those who are involved in governance. And that for us is not just about professional municipal services, but it's also about accountability of the political leadership. That's really what will make this thing turn around. At the end of it, if you have an unstable or an unwilling political leadership at a municipal level, you will not be able to ensure that those who are under pressure to perform wrong actions or transactions, or those who are corrupt, are also held into account, because the leadership at the top has to be the first one to be held accountable. And I would say we need the engagement with the party political leadership to say, take responsibility for the actions that are taking place in that municipality under your leadership. You have seen how in some of the instances, there have been a lot of changes in terms of who's the mayor, who's the speaker, because of the coalitions being unstable. That's one of the issues that this committee is looking at. What is the impact of hung municipality and the instability that's associated with that in the performance and of municipalities and in governance and the dysfunctionality. And we think we need to focus very strongly on that. And that's why we've got the committee will be going out on a study tour to look at some of the situations in some of the countries abroad. I think in this case, we're looking at Denmark or Norway. We will be looking at one of those, because the issue is that going forward, the question of hung municipalities is something that we should have a solution for. But the issue of ensuring accountability, even if it's a majority, one party majority, there has to be accountability, and the political leadership has to take responsibility. Then the other question, I think the issue of ghost workers has been properly dealt with by my colleagues, and I would like to add on that, and the issue of audit, what you call the HR audits, that's been addressed, as it were. But don't take for granted this kind of interaction. When you ask these questions to us, we are made even wiser on issues that we're going to have to raise with our colleagues in the committee, in the administration, in the executive. And therefore, a continuous interaction with the public, whenever there's an opportunity, must be used by the public to hold us to account. It also is to help us to see what are the gaps. Sometimes we think everything is going fine until, we go to a municipality, they give us a nice report and we say everything is fine here and we have no problem, until we meet the public. And the public says, no, none of that is our experience. We've got incorrect billing. We've got a huge, unaffordable, costs associated with water, electricity. There's a budget, an infrastructure budget here, but we've got potholes here. It's only when the public holds us to account, when the public comes to us and raises the issues, that we must then we are able to take the issues forward. So I'm saying any opportunity to engage your public representatives must be used, particularly where there's dissatisfaction with service delivery, because it is the route to go in a democratic dispensation is not to go out and ban barricades, burn down clinics because you want a school, burn down the school because your roads are bad, and so on. Is to actually go to those public representatives and raise these issues and demand answers, and we must come back and give you the answers. And the parliamentarians will go and get the ministers, the executive, to come with the answers, bring them onto those areas, so that we must make the democracy work. So there's no democracy that will work. There's no accountability that will work unless there's public involvement. Then, we can also do petitions. You can also write letters. And the bishop was talking about an issue here where we're actually invited to go and sit and listen to the challenges that were faced by a particular community, and to take those issues up with the relevant departments. And we have to continue doing the same, because that's how democracy must work. Then I think the last issue for me relates to the questions around transgressions and certificates of debt. The Auditor General at this point has got the ability to issue those, but what they've indicated to us is that let's go through all of these issues of accountability, because their role is just to show us the mirror. We must then go and do the corrections. But when there's a sense of continuous transgressions or incorrigible behavior, then we need to then invoke the questions of internal disciplinary processes, the investigation by the various government investigating agents, and then hold those responsible long before there's a need for the Auditor General to even act. And we shouldn't actually absolve those who are responsible for holding a system of accountability by saying that the Auditor General will ultimately do this because they've got the powers. The reality is that we need to be able to act long before there's a need for the Auditor General to act. With that, let me say thank you very much. I hope that we've clarified some of the issues. Thank you.
No, if you can bear with me, Honorable Chairpersons, to detain you for a few more minutes. We realized that we omitted our stakeholders from the virtual platform because this is hybrid. So this, the number of stakeholders we have joined virtually. They've got questions. I'm going to ask Shihla to go through the questions, but in case he's reading them too fast, for you to take notes, I've asked that they be WhatsApp to you as well, so you can you can refer to them on your WhatsApp inboxes. Shihla.
Thank you very much. The first question is from Mashile Palane from Matlabine Foundation outside Zanin in Limpopo, my hometown. Dr. Mkhize, does COGTA have quotas for appointing headmen at traditional communities as we witness illegal and mushrooming of appointment of headmen in our communities? Second one, why do provincial COGTA and the Premier continue to appoint regents while qualified senior traditional leaders are ignored and discriminated against, more especially senior women traditional leaders? This is to Chairperson Wessels. The Auditor General, why are you not auditing traditional council accounts? There is a case at Batlhabine, Bamhoboya, whereby a worker at the traditional council opened his own bank accounts in the name of the traditional council and deposited funds there. According to the Khoisan Act, you are supposed to audit traditional councils, not COGTA alone. Another one to Chairperson Wessels. The Mopani District Municipality had a disclaimer audit outcome over the past 4 years, but COGTA and Treasury continue to release funds to the municipality. Why? And this one is from Kumbulani Leslie Mdluli from Gauteng Province. He represents Unmuted Coalition for South African Youth Sector. What budgetary provisions exist to support ethical training and the development of professional standards within the public service? How will the budget ensure that public servants adhere to ethical guidelines and serve the public interests with integrity? And I have another one from Ms. Dimakatso Babe, who is the Civil Society Unmuted Acting Chairperson in Gauteng Province. Please do inform about processes or channels that citizens should employ to hold accounting officers accountable and how to open criminal cases to make sure such officers suffer the consequences of their actions. The fact that deployed cadres that are committing serial white-collar crimes are not held accountable, but instead they are moved from one institution to another is actually promotion of unethical behavior. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Those are the final questions from the virtual platform. Thank you very much. Honorable Wessels.
I'll be very brief. Thank you, Program Director, and thank you once again for the questions from the virtual platform as well. With regards to the non-auditing of the traditional councils, that's something that I think the Honourable Mkhize will be in a better position to address than myself. But I do take note, and we will do further scrutiny as to what the issues there are. But I do agree that there should be accountability on all levels, including traditional councils. But the Honourable Mkhize will assist me there. Also, with regards to funds that are released to municipalities, that's a little outside my committee's mandate, and the Honourable Mkhize will also address that. And the ethical guidelines is also something that's more with the Honourable de Villiers. That's a ghost currently, but that is something that obviously is a priority for this Parliament, and is something that has been, even in previous terms, where the emphasis is being placed on professionalization. That includes spending money on ensuring that that the execution of the public office is done with ethical guidelines and with the necessary adherence to those guidelines. So I do think that's an ongoing process, but it's something that's important, and it's a very important question as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Very interesting questions, and I certainly am happy that you were able to pick them up, because I think it's also important that this communication, this interaction should be accessible to people outside those who are in the confines of the Cape Town offices. So I'm very pleased. The first question around the appointment of headmen in the community. No, it's not the role of COCTA as a department to appoint izinduna or headmen. It is the role of that particular traditional council to appoint izinduna and submit to COCTA, and COCTA will simply record who has been appointed. What has become a bit of a challenge of late was that this issue of appointment of traditional headmen was a matter that used to just be the preserve of the traditional authority and never had a reason to be recorded within the COCTA department. But since there's been a stipend introduced for the headmen, it therefore becomes important now to report who those are on record. And now this complicates the matters, because you would then find that the rate at which headmen are appointed by the Inkosi or traditional council might be faster than the recording that happens at COCTA. And so you'll end up with someone who's now been appointed but who's not reported in COCTA, or maybe the one who was recorded in COCTA has now been removed as a headman, but now COCTA has still not been informed, and therefore they keep the name on until that process has been dealt with. It has, of course, complicated things a little bit, because obviously COCTA now has to be able to say under how much time do you need to record the appointment or the suspension or the removal and so on. And I think what we are experiencing here is a gap in the communication that has happened here, but not that COCTA has got authority to appoint any traditional or any headman. Then why does provincial COCTA, the Premier and MEC, appoint regents and sideline competent senior traditional leaders? Again, the question of who becomes a regent in any chieftaincy or kingship is not the role of COCTA. It is the role of the family in question. Such a family would then recommend to the department, to COCTA, for the regent to be appointed. But sometimes they may then appoint someone, and in the process of investigation, COCTA might pick up certain inaccuracies or infringements of certain rules, and they might raise those issues to the family, and therefore might end up with that misunderstanding coming up. But it is not, again, COCTA that will recognize or that will appoint the regent in any of those communities. Primarily, the appointment of traditional leaders, particularly in succession, is a function of the umndeni, which we call the family of the late or the deceased Nkosi or incumbent who have to take that decision. Then the rest is a question of fulfilling the administrative processes that have to be followed, because at the end, once that's been done, then of course government has to support and protect whoever has been recognized in law as a regent or a successor in title. Why not audit traditional trust accounts? They have to be audited. And there's no two ways about it. And in fact, COCTA has to be brought to the attention of COCTA if we believe that there's abuse that is taking place. And in this case, there is no one who would have the authority to use public funds and deposit them into personal accounts. And if that happens, it's something that needs to be reported. And in any situation where you've got that transgression suspected or known to have taken place, there has to be a report. There has to be a report to the police and also to the department. Another interesting question is, why do you release funds to municipalities that have got disclaimers? As a matter of interest, in this audit opinion by the Auditor General, 6 municipalities that have received adverse opinion were actually responsible for 2.7 billion rands of municipal budget. So there isn't a law to stop the municipality from receiving the funds because they were disclaimed. The way to correct that is to actually force the municipal authority, that is the speaker, the mayor, the council, and the municipal manager, to take action on those who are responsible for the transgression that has resulted in the adverse opinion. That is why we all have to stand up and hold everyone in the value chain accountable. So it is not the responsibility, it's not the problem of the community that is supposed to receive services if the municipality does not govern properly and therefore has got negative audit outcomes. They still have to be serviced, even though the municipality is misbehaving or the municipality has not been involved in proper financial management processes. It is the administrative and oversight processes that need to be invoked to correct that, but you wouldn't want to punish the public that is supposed to receive the services simply because their municipality has not followed the right accounting processes. So that is why that is the case. Then the issue around ethical training, certainly Honorable de Villiers would have probably responded to that, but I think as a rule, the issue of ethical training is part of government training among the civil servants, but we wouldn't be able to give you a budget for that and how those programs are structured. I think it probably could have been raised with the relevant department. Again, when there is a budget hearing for every mayor, that's why there's always a responsibility for the mayor to go to public hearings, so that when the budget is being prepared, the public is consulted. Everywhere the public is supposed to be consulted. And so if that situation arises for consultation, that's where the citizen must go and participate. That's the process also of holding the municipality accountable for to the public in the way that they utilize the resources allocated to them. You are then free to raise issues about what is being planned for the budget and what was spent on the previous budget. That is what the public must always utilize. It's a statutory requirement, and the public has to utilize the space. You can write to the mayor or mayor's office or attend those meetings, but certainly the citizens have got the right in this regard to hold everyone accountable. And if that does not satisfy the public, then they've also got an ability to write and petition the mayor or the speaker. Particularly, the speaker would have to receive all those petitions and raise the complaint about the mayor, about the municipality, and that the speaker has got an obligation to listen to those petitions of the public. But if that does not work, you're still welcome to approach the provincial legislature, whether it's a provincial member of the legislature or the MEC that you raise your concerns and complaints to. Is within your rights to hold everyone accountable. If that doesn't work, you've also got the right to write to the minister at national level on COCTA, but also you can write to the committee. And when the committee picks that up, then again, the portfolio committee on COCTA would also pick up the issue and raise it with the relevant ministers and the relevant municipalities and the relevant mayors or speakers. So you actually have absolute authority on that matter. And our citizens need to know that the reason why you vote us into office is precisely so that you should be able to come back to us if you think there's not adequate service delivery, or if you believe that there's governance issues are infringed upon, or if there's criminality. And when there's suspicion of criminality, excuse me, apart from reporting through the chain I've just indicated, you can actually go to the police and lay a charge with information so that that matter must be investigated. So you are fully allowed to deal with that. Then let me then say the question of deployed cadres commit crime and that they're moved on. Okay, let me be a little controversial on this one. The issue of deployment had more to do with understanding policies that have to be implemented. And that's based on the fact that different parties will come in the course of elections to indicate what their priorities are going to be. But there is no deployment that can be acceptable where someone who does not qualify for the position could then be justified on the basis that they were a deployed cadre. It's simple. It's criminal. If you appoint someone who does not qualify, if you transgress the appointment processes because someone needed to be appointed and they didn't qualify, it's criminal. There is no explanation of a deployed cadre if the appointment process is done illegally. There is no way you can explain it. So at the end of the day, what we need is whoever gets appointed must qualify in terms of the requirements of that particular position, in terms of the qualifications that they need for them to perform, in terms of the experience that they need to perform. And that is what ultimately for us is material in the appointment process. You cannot come up and explain, excuse me, you cannot come and explain to us you have someone who has no qualification on financial accounting to be an accounting or to be a chief financial officer and explain that is because he's a deployed cadre. You cannot deploy somebody who does not have the qualification. So at the end of the day, whether it's deployed cadre or not deployed cadre, that's not the issue. The real issue is, does the person qualify for the post as advertised? If you do not qualify, then it's illegal, straightforward. Now, you cannot then use any political justification that someone landed up in a post because they were a deployed cadre and everyone agrees that such an individual did not qualify, did not meet the basic needs of what that post required. So I don't think we should actually mix up these terms. At the end of the day, For a municipality to run, we need competent leaders. For a government department to run, we need competent leaders who have got the right qualification, and there are enough of those people out there. And so, insofar as the question is concerned, if someone is involved in something that is a criminal, then of course they have to be investigated. Whatever the explanation for their being brought into the municipality, it's irrelevant. What is relevant is that even if you qualified, you have the necessary qualification, you have the necessary experience, but if you are then involved in criminal activity, then of course there's a different process. It must be involvement of the criminal investigations that must decide how that matter is closed. And in addition, there should also be internal disciplinary processes. So I think we must just remove the issue that there can be a justification for anyone to be in a position for which they do not qualify. There's no such an explanation that can be acceptable. And so my point of my comment to the particular individual, anyone that has been found to have been involved in criminal activity would then follow the process I explained earlier, where the municipality would discipline them, and then they'll be on record. And then when there is another appointment that has to be, that the individual is moved to, the minister has got the right to intervene and say, well, this one shall not, because of the fact that there is a record of criminal misdoing that has been part of their career. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much to the Honorable Chairpersons, Honorable de Villiers in his ghostly presence. He did say that he was ghosting us. And then Honorable Vessels, thank you very much. Honorable Dr. Mkhize, thank you very much for your presence and for engaging with the stakeholders and the media. We thank you, members of the media, for your presence. We thank you, our esteemed stakeholders, the representatives of NGOs, civil society, sectoral professional organizations, faith-based organizations, representatives of traditional leadership, youth representatives and students and members of the public, both physically here in Cape Town, Good Hope Chamber, and on the virtual space, Zoom platform. Thank you very much for joining us, the length and breadth of South Africa, and here for this important engagement. Thank you very much. Before you leave, please, because we have been talking about the issues of audits, don't put Parliament into trouble by leaving without eating, because there is food that has been paid that you must make use of, otherwise it will be a fruitless expenditure. So please, before you leave, just next door, there is something to grab to eat before you leave. Thank you very much for your presence. We really value your presence and engagement. Thank you very much. The press conference is adjourned.